Hi everybody, I'm Any New Province, and this week we're playing Noir Flicker for Net Benefits, the series where we explore the benefits of net decking in Pauper. If you're like me, then the first time you saw Noir Flicker putting up results, it's when Travis Habrula won the Rags to Riches tournament with it last weekend. But in reality, Reddit user Trock along with Reddit user Raptor65 have been playing and tuning this deck for a very long time. They're also writing a series of articles about this deck, starting with its history and talking about all of the card choices, and they've even posted a matchup primer. I'm going to link those articles in the description down below. Make sure you check them out. Even if you're not interested in playing this deck, they're an amazing resource and they describe a lot of the intricate things you can do with all of the cards in this deck. In the meantime, I'm going to kick my deck tech off by describing the two main combo pieces and namesakes for Noir Flicker. First, we have Ghostly Flicker, which costs 2 and a blue for an instant that allows you to exile 2 artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. Most Pauper players are well aware of how much of a house Ghostly Flicker can be at generating value. A lot of the best abilities in Pauper are enter the battlefield abilities, and Ghostly Flicker allows you to trigger those again. Like most Ghostly Flicker decks, we're not looking to just trigger those enter the battlefield abilities one extra time, we're actually trying to loop Ghostly Flicker with Archaeomancer to trigger them a ton of times. Archaeomancer costs 2 blue for a 1/2 human wizard, and when it enters the battlefield, you return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. As you probably figured out, we're looking to flicker our Archaeomancer and another one of our value permanents so that we can continue to get their enter the battlefield triggers for as long as we have mana to do so. Trock and Raptor56 explained that we have Archaeomancer in this deck over Mnemonic Wall because of how mana hungry it is. When you're trying to cast multiple of these expensive value spells every turn, sometimes that 1 mana discount really matters. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the value creatures we have that are situationally great against a lot of decks, but can also double as a win condition for us. First, we have Mulldrifter, one of the most powerful spells in the entire Pauper format. Mulldrifter costs 4 and a blue for a 2/2 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards. This is already amazing, but Mulldrifter can occasionally double as a divination with its evoke ability. You can pay 2 and a blue and cast Mulldrifter, but you have to sacrifice it when it enters the battlefield. You do still get to draw the 2 cards though. We're also running Stormbound Geist as another evasive flyer if we are winning the game through damage, or as a great Delver deck hoser. Stormbound Geist costs 1 blue for a 2/2 flyer, and it can block only creatures with flying, but that's okay. We're looking to get this in front of core Skyfishers, Delvers, and Fairies. It also has the Undying ability, which means when this creature dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its control with a +1/+1 counter for it. This is so great against Delver decks. It trades with the first flip Delver, then it comes back with a counter and it blocks a bunch of Fairies until it eventually trades with another Delver. It's also really great against core Skyfishers and Glinthawks. It trades with the Glinthawk or the Skyfisher, comes back with a counter, those Glinthawks can't get through and neither can the Skyfishers. Next, I'm going to talk about the counter magic in this deck. We have to survive in the early game so that we can start dominating our opponent with card advantage in the late game. First, we have a 1 of Pyroblast as a concession to the dominance of Delver decks in the format. Pyroblast costs 1 red for an instant, and it counters target spell if it's blue or destroys target permanent if it's blue. Having a 1 of Pyroblast gives us an opportunity to even stop those draws from Delver decks where they go turn 1 Fairy Miscreant into turn 2 Ninja of the Deep Hours. Also, some of our worst matchups are Tron decks. Pyroblast helps us fight against some of their high value cards like Mystical Teachings and Mulldrifters. We also have a 1 of Exclude, which the deck builders describe as a cheaper Pauper version of Cryptic Command. It costs 2 and a blue for an instant that counters target creature spell and draws you a card. We're also running the quintessential Pauper counter magic in Counterspell, the original. It costs 2 blue and it counters target spell. Finally, we have a 1 of Soul Manipulation, which costs 1 blue-black for an instant that allows you to counter target creature spell and or return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. This is an amazing spell on its own, letting you buy back your evoked Mulldrifters or a Stormbound Geist after it's already put in a ton of work while disrupting your opponent casting creature spells. The deck builders also highlight Soul Manipulation's ability to create this chump blocker loop with Archaeomancer. You can keep getting it back with Soul Manipulation and then chump blocking their non-evasive creatures with it. Next, I'm going to talk about our removal, and we have a ton of it. We're trying to stop our opponent from developing at all in the early game so that we can win when the board is clear. First, we have 1 copy of Electrickery. This is so good against some decks. There are variants of Delver that are on mostly X1s. This will wipe their board. It also stops Elves from having those crazy broken draws where they have a bunch of mana dorks and we have to do something about it. Electrickery costs 1 red to deal 1 damage to target creature you don't control, which is pretty bad, but you can overload it for 1 and a red, which means you can cast it for 1 and a red. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. Of course, we have 4 copies of Lightning Bolt as well. It costs 1 red and deals 3 damage to any target at instant speed. Lightning Bolt isn't only one of the most efficient and versatile removal spells in the Pauper format. We can also try to loop this with 2 Archaeomancers and a Ghostly Flicker to kill our opponent with burn damage. We're running some Flame Slashes to round out our red removal. It costs 1 red and deals 4 damage to target creature. Flame Slash is just great for reaching out and killing almost any creature in the Pauper format. It does that extra point of damage over Lightning Bolt, so you can make sure to kill all of Affinity's 4/4s while they're spewing them onto the board. Our next bit of removal isn't damage based, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. First, we have Devour Flesh, which costs 1 black for an instant and causes target player to sacrifice a creature. They also gain life equal to that creature's toughness. In the articles I've linked below, the deck builders explain why they're using Devour Flesh over any other instant speed edict, and it's because the games go so long, you might actually have to sacrifice an Augur Bolas that's chump blocking to get you the extra turn you need to turn the corner. We've also got some Serrated Arrows. They cost 4 mana for an artifact that enter the battlefield with 3 arrowhead counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are no arrowhead counters on Serrated Arrows, you have to sacrifice it. You can tap it, remove an arrowhead counter from it, and put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Serrated Arrows can kill a lot of creatures on its own. It'll pick off any X1 we need it to, but if we can Ghostly Flicker it and use it in the same turn, we can kill X2s. Also, it'll shrink down our opponent's flyers so that our Mull Drifters don't have to trade down. Finally, we have a 1 of Terminate, because who doesn't want a catch-all removal spell in their deck? Terminate costs black, red, and destroys target creature. It can't be regenerated. Next, I'm going to talk about our card filtering and card draw. First, we have Preordain, which costs 1 blue for a sorcery that lets you scry 2, then draw a card. We're also running Augur of Bolas, one of the best blockers and value creatures in all of the Pauper format. It costs 1 blue for a 1/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This next spell is a spicy one, but I love what it can do for the deck. It's Comparative Analysis, and it costs 3 blue for an instant that lets you draw 2 cards. Comparative Analysis isn't really great on its own. It's a 4 mana instant speed draw 2, but we're hoping to cast it for its surge cost more often than not. What that means is you can pay 2 and a blue to cast it if you have cast a spell before Comparative Analysis this turn. Another thing that deck builders talk about is that Comparative Analysis sometimes happens to be your win condition. You can target your opponent with this to mill them out. Finally, we have the glue that holds the whole deck together. It's an amazing value spell and one of the greatest tutors we have access to. This is Mystical Teachings, which costs 3 and a blue for an instant that allows you to search your library for an instant card or a card with flash, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. The front side of Mystical Teachings is amazing on its own. It allows us to build our deck with a bunch of great situational one-ofs that we can tutor for so long as we have 4 mana. What gives Mystical Teachings even more punch is that it's also a card advantage spell because you can flash it back for 5 and a black, which means you can cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost. You have to exile it afterwards. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. Do not let me understate how difficult it must have been to tune and create a mana base that's consistent for a 3-color deck in Pauper. That's really hard to do. First, we have 4 Ash Barrens, which only add colorless mana, but you can also use them for basic land cycling, which means while they're in your hand, you can pay 1 generic mana and discard them to search your library for any basic land card. We're also running some standard Pauper duels in Bloodfell Caves, which enters the battlefield tapped, gains you a life, and when it becomes untapped, it allows you to add black or red. Swiftwater Cliffs are the blue-red cousin of Bloodfell Caves. They enter the battlefield tapped, gain you a life, and when they become untapped, they let you add blue or red. We're running 3 Dimir Aqueducts too. They're your blue-black Karus. They let you recur your Bloodfell Caves and your Swiftwater Cliffs to gain you a little bit of extra life because they enter the battlefield tapped, and when they enter the battlefield, you have to return a land you control to your hand. When they become untapped, they add blue and black. We're also running Bajuka Bog, another great land to recur with your Dimir Aqueducts. It enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. It's sweet to have a bit of main deck graveyard hate. Finally, we have our main deck basic lands. First, we have 7 snow-covered islands along with 2 snow-covered mountains. We have snow-covered so that sometimes we can pull one over on our opponent and convince them we're actually on Skred Delver. We're also running a single basic swamp to make sure that we have access to black mana with our Ash Barrens. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. First, we have a couple of Gorilla Shamans for blowing up the lands of Affinity and Boros Monarch, and maybe a Prophetic Prism along the way too. We have 2 Chainer's Edicts as better edicts than Devour Flesh if we're going into a long game or if we just need more edicts. We have a Flame Slash if our opponent's on a bunch of X4s, we can bring this in. We have 2 Pyroblasts for fighting our counters through our opponent's counters, and we have another Soul Manipulation manipulation for creature decks. It helps us loop those Archaeomancers and also counter our opponent's creatures. For additional graveyard hate, we've got 2 Nihil spell bombs to nuke our opponent's graveyard while preserving our own. We have a Crypt Incursion, which doubles as graveyard hate and life gain for burn. We have a Luxor River Shrine, which is an awesome little bit of life gain tech, and 3 Hydroblasts for countering all of those burn spells or destroying those red creatures. And there it is, Noir Flicker. I have to encourage you to read those articles I've linked in the description down below about this deck. I hope they help when I take this deck into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince. We're there every Monday night playing competitive Pauper decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching this deck tech. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you on Monday night.